Hey guys, thanks for joining me. I have a little lesson here today to show you that's based off of an artist whose name is MC Escher. And MC Escher has some very famous pieces that you may recognize. This is one of them. He makes what are called tessellations or tessellating shapes, which are interlocking shapes or objects that can fill a space infinitely without any gaps in between them. So I'm going to show you today how we're going to use a little square piece of paper and then turn them into a paper template that we can use to trace over and over again and create a design kind of like this one with a fish. That's going to be the theme for our little project here. I chose MC Escher, this project in particular, for two reasons. One of them, I love how creative he is in making an abstract shape and then turning it into something. And it's also something that we can do at home with not a huge amount of materials, special materials. So as long as you have a few things in front of you, we can attempt one of these at home. It's also something you can finish once it's all done in pencil to get the shapes down. It can be finished with anything: pencil, crayon, pencils, markers, whatever you have at home. Okay, so let's get started. I'll show you what you need. Okay, so these are the basic materials you're going to need to collect before you get started. You need a pair of scissors, any type of tape will do, pencil and an eraser, and most importantly, you need a piece of paper that is cut to a perfect square. The size of the paper doesn't really matter. It can be a 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch square, but you do want to make sure that it is a perfect square. So use your ruler, take your time getting it as perfect as you can. The way that we're going to do this is we're going to be doing some cutting from one side of this paper template and sliding and taping onto the far side. Our goal again is to create that shape that interlocks with itself perfectly without any gaps. So that's basically what a tessellation is, something that just repeats itself over and over, fitting together perfectly. First thing we're going to do, taking your pencils, we're going to start in this corner and end in this corner with some type of line. We're going to aim for our first one here for a little fish. So I'm just going to do the shape of a fish mouth. I'm going to keep this one relatively simple. I'm going to try to do it as simple as I can. And then I'm going to cut this out. And again, when I'm cutting, just like when I was drawing, I want to start right in the corner and finish right in the corner as well. So I'm going to take my scissors, take my time, and carefully cut that out. You want to make sure also when you're cutting this that you do it all in one line. So you don't want to backtrack and cut any little slices of paper off. You want this piece to come away with in one nice cut. We don't really want to be going back in and trimming pieces off because it'll make it so that it doesn't really work perfectly when everything interlocks. So I'm going to take this piece that I've cut out there. Again, this is going to be our fish mouth. And I'm going to first start by just lining it up to make sure that I have it the right way. It's the right orientation. And then I'm going to lift that up. I'm going to slide it over here. If I have a nice perfect square, it should match corner to corner perfectly. And I'm going to tape that down. Take your time when you're taping this too. I kind of want to push the two pieces together so they're nice and flush there. I don't want to have a big gap between those pieces of paper. This has to be done sort of precisely if you want it to line up perfectly when you're ready to start tracing them. So take your time with both the drawing, cutting, and now taping these together. Okay, part one done. Next thing I'm going to do is take a piece out of the top here that's then going to be slid down this way. So to recap, this one I cut out here has slid over this way to its opposite side. I'm going to do the same thing, take a piece here that's going to be slid down to the bottom here as well. I'm just going to keep this really simple. We'll do sort of a shape like that, making this into a tail perhaps, and then I can get a little fin maybe up here at the top of the fish. Once you get the hang of making these little templates, you can get creative with all the different types of lines that you can use. Really the main thing is that you start in a corner and finish in a corner, but you can create all sorts of different shapes and see what you can turn them into. I got a little off my line there, but that's okay. As long as I'm not going to trim that off, that's fine. So I'm going to line that up, make sure that that fits perfectly where it was cut out from. Lift it and slide it back to its opposite side here. Again, if my square is perfect, which hopefully it is, that should line up nicely. And I'm going to do the same thing, tape that down. Okay, so I have now created a shape, we'll see how this works here, that should interlock with itself over and over again without any gaps. And we can test that out here by tracing it on a bigger piece of paper. I'm just going to take that little corner down here too. So I'll start by just doing one shape right in the middle of my paper, and I'm going to trace that, trying to get all those little corners and grooves traced carefully. Okay, there we go, fish number one. So the idea now is, with this fish shape, and if you're not really seeing a fish yet, it'll come. I'm going to be able to take this and slide this in every direction. So we'll go over this way, up, down, to the left, and it should fit in perfectly. So I'm going to take this, move it until it lines up, interlocking with itself here, and then I'm going to trace it again. So we'll speed this up. I'm going to trace this over my entire page. Okay, there's one row, and I'll repeat the same thing below it and above it. Oops. That part in there too. Okay. That looks pretty good. So I've traced it over the whole page here. If you see any little bits, like you kind of want to make sure that your fish are going right off the edge of your paper. So we're trying to create the illusion that this is a pattern that can just repeat itself over and over again. So even get the little bits here that just go right off the edge. So in order to start to envision a fish within this shape that we've created, I'm going to take a separate piece of paper for a second and just draw some ideas. So I'll lay this down and just do one little sketch of the outline here and start to think about how I might be able to make this look a little bit more fish-like. Okay, so there's my outline, and I'm going to Start with the obvious one. So this is going to be the face over here with the mouth. I'm going to add a big fish lip like that. I'll add an eye over here. Let's color that in dark. Let's do a little fin up here at the top. Let's do a big bottom fin here like this. This will be a little different. And then we'll make a tail back here like this. You have to sort of get creative when you've made a shape like this. You have to play with some options in terms of how you might make that shape into a fish. It's not going to look like the perfect fish you might draw normally. Next thing we're going to do is add a little fin here. And maybe we'll just do some other little details here. So that's maybe how I could envision a fish out of here. Maybe I could fill this whole part in quick with some scales as well. Okay, there's my strange little fish. So now I can take my good copy paper here, knowing sort of what my design might be looking like. I'm going to lay this down, and I'm going to start to place some of those objects into my fish. So the first thing I'm going to do is stick with the mouth. So using this first one here, my little sketch, as my guide. Hopefully you can see both of those. I can start to pick out some of the little details that I see here. So first thing I'll do is the upper lip here, and I'm just going to draw that in. Just the one upper lip, I'm going to do that on every fish and then add my next detail. I'm going to draw that detail in every single fish here. So I'm going to go around, even the ones that are sticking off the edge a little bit, I'm going to add that little detail into each one. It's okay if they're all a little bit different. And I can go in now, look back at my sketch that I created here. And maybe I'll do the bottom lip. I'll add that onto each one as well. So by breaking it down into just one little step at a time like this, you're more likely to get each fish pretty close to the same. Like I said, it's okay if each one is a little bit different. The idea will be the same here. What should we do next? Let's do the top little fin here as well. So a line that comes right across the top in our fish, right about there. So I'm going to add that in. I'll just do the first little line on each one of these. Again, even the fish that are going right off the page, you want to include any of those details that you see. That looks good. And then I'll go in and just add some lines in there for each one. Okay, let's do the eye next. So that's just going to be our three little ovals And they're going to go sort of roughly right there. So I'll start with the biggest and add those, and I'll fill in the pupil as well. Okay, I think that's all. I don't think I would see these because they're above the upper lip, so I may not see the top row there. Next thing I have that I can add, maybe we'll do this big line that comes right across here, and this at the same time, the little fin there. We'll just speed this up a little bit. So I'll put my little fin in and then add my line that sort of separates the head from where the scales are going to start. So our little fin. Like that. See that one, this will see a little fin. Okay, I think that's all of those that I'll see, and now I'll just go in and add the lines into my fins there. Okay, so I finished adding all the little lines into the fins there. And then looking next at our little design, I'm going to do the bottom fin here that's sort of at the bottom half. And it looks as though it's going to come up almost to where the lip ends there. So that's going to help me sort of get these the same. So I'll start here. This is going to come right up to there. And I'm going to repeat that same line in all of my fish. There's those. There's one there. Okay, oh, that one, and that one. And then I can go ahead and add my lines into those ones as well. Okay, that looks good. And next thing I'm going to do is I'll add this little line at the back here for the little tail fin that's happening there. So we'll simplify this a little bit. I'm just going to come right down to the lips there. So that's going to go like this. And we'll add our lines in there as well. Okay, and then I think all that's left to add are the scales. Okay. I think that's all the different little detail that I want to add to this. At this point with your drawing at home, you can get into finishing this off with whatever materials you have there. So you could by all means continue to work with pencil and shade different parts in. You could get out your colored pencils and add some color that way, markers. If you're working on slightly thicker watercolor or slightly thicker paper and want to incorporate a bit of watercolor, you could by all means do that. It's pretty versatile. You can kind of add your finishing touches or detail with whatever materials you have at home. Thanks for following along, guys. Let us know if you have any questions, and if you get around to trying this on your own and want to send us a picture, we'd love to see how it went for you guys. Thanks so much.